Hello. Recently, Dark Knight and I attempted this conversation to look deeper into the problems that we see within the MGTOW community, and specifically the men who seem to be unwilling to move on with their lives. Our motives, though largely relevant to the content of the Hangout, were, I believe, to be quite noble. And we tried to explain, despite our limitations of being humans, at the best of our abilities what we thought was largely a problem that we saw. Sadly, the responses, especially the negative ones, were something that we expected. Irrelevant though it might be that our predictions were met, it speaks to a deeper cynicism that exists within me and Dark Knight about the very nature of the people within this community. Our cynicism seems to be quite simple. We believe the knowledge exists, the ability exists, but the want is lacking. The freed and liberated slaves that don't want to serve a master anymore do not feel inclined to act because of the absent master. The energy is lacking, the motivation is generally lacking, and the excuses unfortunately run quite wild. The MGTOW content for its most part serves a purpose to educate men, but I don't believe that that should be the only purpose, because it should teach those men what to do with this education. But I believe for its most part, the majority of the content does still serve a purpose. Though my videos largely relevant as they might be, and not MGTOW enough or whatever else outlandish accusation you might think of to assign to them, they still have helped some people. And for that, I'm proud. Saving a life, or a few lives for that matter, is always something that is generally good. We hear time and time again that MGTOW saved my life, but I don't feel like doing anything anymore. Many of the men seem to disengage, distance themselves, and wallow in their misery, in this mental prison covered by fear of this unknown that may come afterwards. However, it is my belief that a life saved, or any life for that matter, should be enjoyed and cherished. It shouldn't simply be lived. Within the MGTOW library of these thousands of videos, the topic has been touched and has been covered before, and it has been said before that men should go about finding their own passions and living their own lives, free. But the one slaves have trouble grasping the idea of freedom, the idea of not having a master. Being free is a liberation at first, but then, who is directing you other than you? People seem to have a problem deciding what the next step might be. Slavery, though a harsh term which I seem to be willingly using here, it describes the mentality of many of the guys that I speak privately and in email exchanges with. The direction does not seem to come from within, but it needs to come from a figure of authority or something like that, someone who seems to know better. The Milgram experiment showed that people were willing to commit acts against their own conscience when instructed to by a figure of authority, and the direction that may be given to people on how to live their lives seems to be quite unethical to me, especially when it comes to how to deal with specific problems in their lives. And I believe the same aspect may have occurred to many other MGTOW other than myself and Dark Knight here when encountered with this similar problem of how to move on. You see, many of us watch MGTOW content not simply for entertainment and education, but many of us keep watching in order to reinforce a set of beliefs that we seem to have. Sandman famously says, "Thank you for taking your daily dose of red pills." And that seems to have seeped into the conscience of many MGTOW. I don't say this to accuse Sandman, but many of us are interested about what petty little things women and feminists alike have done, much more than we care about our real lives. This creates an excuse almost for not living our lives and going out and achieving things for ourselves. Anything from socks to caterpillars is somehow serving the system and gynocentrism. However, as Neo put it upon his return, you're still plugged into the system and you're still part of it. You're still part of the matrix. Many of us have a mental prison that we have built upon these solid rocks of factual evidence. Gynocentrism serves only women. Men, the majority of them at least, will protect and serve the feminine. Women are solipsistic and will only care about themselves. Female nature, for its most part, when examined through the looking glass, seems to be largely immoral in the eyes of other men, but so seems to be the nature of other men when examined thoroughly. Understanding this concept, you seem to look around the world and you see enemies surrounding you and approaching your fort, and you seem to do the bare minimum, and you seem to live your life locked up, not necessarily in a home, but locked away from any experience that anyone can bring to you. The grass is not green, the world is not beautiful, life is not full of enjoyment, and who seems to be the enemy in all of this, you ask? Is it the world? Is it women? Is it gynocentrism? Is it other men? Is it perhaps all of these things? The enemies are everywhere and the dangers are all around. The future is unknown, and you are only safe if you stay put. If you keep watching, if you keep reading, if you keep your focus so deep into the microscale, maybe you'll be safe. But life simply passes you by and you have simply stayed put. Your prison seems to be not one of the world. It is not simply made because of the system. Your actual prison, following these realizations that we have all come to accept, exists only within you. It exists simply in your own mind. This isn't hard to grasp. This is not me ignoring the dangers. This is not me telling men to go back to dating or to women or to serve a certain master or the system or whatever. This is me telling you guys that your prisons, the ones that you now live in, have been built by you for you. And we seem to be responsible for that. What you have learned has become so ingrained and so rigid that it has consumed your entire being. The truth should not keep you captive, it should not keep you put. I mean, ask yourselves, not out of anger or despair, what you have at present, whether it's enough. Not if it makes you happy, but whether it's enough for you. Do you wake up and you want to be? Is that tomorrow something that you look forward to? Is your life largely something that's indifferent to you? I know that your body breathes, but is your mind truly free? Does your mind truly want to live? If you're good, if you're content, if you're what you want to be, then what's next for you? If you're not content, again, what's next for you? I honestly believe that a man needs to act, he needs to do in order to get some enjoyment out of his life. In evolutionary terms, a man needs to achieve something in order to gain favor with the females, in order to eventually breed. But that does not describe the true motivations in our behaviors. Ultimately, as a commenter previously said, men seem to work for the opportunity to get sex or a woman who seems to be the ultimate prize. And I do not believe that this is simply what explains our behaviors. Theoretically speaking, a man would not work out, or do anything at all for that matter if the focus was only set to getting sex. Women get attracted to a man that is successful, sure, but a man who is gets pleasure from doing things that he likes as well, whether it is work, whether it is something else, whether it is simply his hobbies. The excitement from men to do does not come from sex or recognition. Those things are of course enjoyable, and they seem to be the side effect of this success, but he does get pleasure from simply doing what he wants, out of the small achievements in the area of his interest. What evolution may want to eventually form is described by the end goal of these actions, but men do not necessarily want to have sex simply to have a child, as men also do not want to do something great because they want to eventually have sex. The instinct is there, and its eventual end result is what evolution instilled in us as a recipe of what worked before in order to produce, well, you. However, taking advantage of those instincts can lead to happiness, it can lead to men feeling content, it can lead to motivation, it can lead to a productive and a highly enjoyable life. Genes do dictate the instincts, but you as a person are not simply a slave to those instincts. Therefore, that rationale about not doing anything because you'll simply be doing things in order to get sex from women is largely irrelevant. With regards to not wanting to provide for a system that has never done anything for you, I find that to be largely your anger talking. The system does provide to many women, sure. The system does exist in place in order to take advantage of men, sure. But you do also exist within this system, therefore you have to do something in order to survive. Your needs for food and shelter do still exist. You can't just simply deny them away. I do not care if you're a millionaire or simply getting by, but you do exist within this system unless you prefer to sleep in the forest or something like that. This is a reality that you do need to accept. You have your say, you have a mouth, and you have a vote. There may not be much that you can realistically do with that, but vote with your wallet, vote with your vote, and speak with your mouth about the truths that you want to speak. I don't know what else to say to that, and whether your ability to work, to do that little bit better in life is providing taxes to this corrupt system, there is nothing that I can do to change that, and you guys cannot do anything in order to change that. And I personally decide to be selfish enough in order to take care of myself, even if the system is largely supported slightly more with my actions. This is not me returning back to the plantation, but this is me simply feeding myself and getting by and living an enjoyable life. And as for women, this forever annoying question as to what to do with them, do whatever you want. You have all been warned. I won't feel bad either way, whatever you decide to do. He who has listened and has not heard will have my sympathies but will not have my empathy. This should apply to me as well, and should apply to all of us, since we have all been warned. We may have been innocent before, but our innocence has largely been taken away from us now. Therefore, you have all been warned, and you can all do whatever you want. This is freedom for you. I don't know about you, but my fears are now knowledge, and it's time to live for me. I want you guys to do what you like, but I believe that the mob has become hateful and it has become spiteful, and the thinking has become rigid and quite uninspiring. I have no problem if this is what's going to be like for you guys within MGTOW, but it seems to be that MGTOW may not be a destination for many men, but it may be a pit stop, and it's a shame, because it is largely the mob that's preventing men from developing this message on. Good night, guys.